This is a tutorial on the septic inspection form, and additionally the well inspection, property monument, and propane tank allocation of cost addendum. For some reason, Carr sandwiched all these different items into the same form, likely because they typically relate to rural homes. But it's only 2 pages, fairly simple. We'll go through it. Could be more simple, but it's another story. All right, so anytime you see any of these items as a feature of a property in which you're going to write an offer, include this form with the purchase agreement. Incorporate this form. So you'll check a box or you'll write in on your purchase agreement that there is a SWPI form that's incorporated into the purchase agreement. On this form, you'll write the date of the purchase agreement here, property address, buyer name, seller name, and we're off to the septic section 1. Inspection and report. Seller should pay for that, absolutely. And this is just a inspected and report prepared by. Location and accessing. Sometimes there's additional work that needs to be done to reach the septic tank or even find it or find the leach field. In any case, check this box, seller. Pumping. If there's a septic tank on premises, it absolutely should be pumped before the property is transferred to the buyer. So we check the box, seller to pay for pump and dump fees. Certification. Seller shall pay for certification by a qualified septic professional. Check this box. Now, maybe you're in a place where the city or county is involved. If that's the case, check the box, but that's done on an individual basis. If you don't know, at least here we know that a qualified professional is going to certify it. Now, sometimes there are repairs needed and that professional can't certify it. So what happens then? Well, there's this additional verbiage they put in here saying, hey, if you need certification or some sort of compliance with the law, then both parties need to figure it out, find some sort of arrangement, or they can cancel. That's what this section says here. And it could be put on the request for repairs. I actually don't like this verbiage here, because if you're asking for certification, that's like saying you're asking for Section 1 termite completion or clearance. It implies that it's the seller's responsibility to make sure that it's certifiable, and the seller may incur some fees. The seller may have to do some repairs of something on the tank or in the system in order to get that certification. But they add this here, which in a way contradicts certification, because if you've already asked for certification, which may be a charge for the seller, now it's giving the seller a way out of having to pay. So this is actually contradictory, but I didn't make the form, so I got to work within the confines of it. So given that this verbiage is problematic, I actually advocate doing this. Now, you could, of course, leave it as is. And what's going to happen is if there is a cost to bring it to certification, the buyer and seller can negotiate it on the request for repairs. I would rather just check this box and say seller shall pay for any repairs needed to obtain certification. And you can get even, I just jotted something down really quick for this example, but you could say something more specific, but just play with the verbiage. But the idea is that you want the seller to bear any costs associated with achieving certification on line D. This is totally superfluous. All right, excavation. Sometimes things need to be dug up. Check the box, seller. I didn't in this example, but seller should be checked. If you have an alternative septic system, you'll know and it'll apply to you. If not, we skip F. Now let's go down to well inspection. Check the box, seller. And now if there's a local government agency, write it in. If not, just leave it blank, let the seller figure it out. Water productivity, check the box, seller, gallons per minute. And you can request a company or just let the seller figure it out, write seller's choice. Again, check the box, choose a company or seller's choice. Check the seller box. And you can, of course, write seller's choice or write the company that you want if you know there's a company that you find trustworthy that does well work, drills wells, or services them. Other, just an auxiliary line. And they put this same verbiage up here. Now, it makes more sense down here, by the way, but it's the same idea. If there's something that an unforeseen cost associated with any of this up above, then both parties need to figure out who's paying for it. And that can go on the request for repairs or be done on an addendum. All right, you'll initial and you'll move on to page 2. Property monument, corners, and boundaries. Now this is about having a land surveyor come out and locate property boundaries. And, either party can pay for this. I mean, sometimes from one perspective, it behooves a seller to do it because that way they indemnify themselves from misrepresenting their property lines. But some sellers, and I've come across them, feel pretty confident they know where their boundary is, and they just say, hey, if the buyer really wants to scrutinize it, it's on them. That's it. If you want to find your property lines, this is where it's addressed, and it's totally negotiable. This whole thing's negotiable in terms of which party pays. I'm just telling you up here in Septic, that really is a seller responsibility. What happens if the buyer pays for the septic tank to be pumped and it falls out of escrow? Is that just a gift to the seller? Do you see how repairs should always be a cost borne by the seller during escrow? Because unless it's the buyer's property, the buyer's just paying repairs for someone else's property. It doesn't make any sense with septic or on any other repairs. All right, and then propane. You see those big propane tanks out in rural homes in the backyard, and it says is it leased or owned. And then this is kind of funny. So the amount of propane tank shall be measured. I think that's just totally over the top. It doesn't matter. I mean, you could ask I guess if you want to prorate the amount of gas in a propane tank, you can just go at it right here, but I think it's kind of silly. If you want the seller to top it off, go ahead and write it in here. But this is definitely kind of over the top. So, all right, down here, both parties sign. We're done with the form. That's it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching.